shit with that. So I'd like to thank everybody for attending today for this first part of a three-part series titled Smart Start Small Business Series. So we are really here today to help answer questions and guide folks through the process of starting a business. Obviously, we can't go over everything because every business is individual. Each one of you have different ideas and are different places, in your journey towards starting a business. So this is a good overview, and from our experience, we've broken it down into several different areas of we thought were important. And those areas are in planning, which is what we'll talk to today. It's the first part of the set of the three-part session. The second part is in marketing, which is extremely important for any business. And the third part is financial management. So just by covering those three aspects of business and trying to answer any questions, we feel like that'll give you a strong head start to opening a business. So who are we? Small Business Development Center, SBDCs, as we're known. We're an SBA program that is a partnership with the states and the state university systems. In South Carolina State University, USC, Clemson, and Winthrop all come together and kind of make up a consortium of universities that host the SBDC program. So you may or may not heard of SBDCs. If you haven't, well, you're about to learn a lot more about SBDCs. We're basically business consultants. We do one-on-one confidential, no fee consulting. That's the key word. So there's no charges for our consulting. And, we're consultants, we're coaches. We're there to help you answer questions. A lot of the times, just by working with a consultant, you can just save yourself a lot of time and headache and trying to figure some answers out to your questions. So that's what we're there for, and, in early stages when you're trying to start a business, it's like, you have a lot of questions, right? So that's what we pride ourselves in helping folks with. And that's what we're going to try to help you with during this series. So the folks here tonight and through the series, they're going to make presentations and work with you, or myself, Jim Johnson. I'm the region director of the SBDC at South Carolina State University. And also we have Pam Free, who is our area manager. She's also a business consultant. She's on the call with us. Gary Robinson, who is not with us today, but may be with us in one of the next few sessions. And Karina Aiken, who is with us today, and she'll be doing the marketing. There's Pam. Karina will be doing the marketing section coming up.
Jim, I think we have a question from Kara Luter. Yeah, she wants to know how many pages should a business plan be?
Okay, so we will get into that today. Business plans can be one page to many pages, but I will go over that for sure. We will talk about the Lean Business Canvas, which is a one-pager, and that's what we'll advocate that you do, throughout this program. And I will discuss that a little bit further in this session. So also, that's a little bit about the SBDC. This series is actually sponsored by the Department of Social Services, and DSS has a lot of great programs to help beneficiaries that are active in their system. They have a program called Snap to Work. If you do receive any SNAP benefits and you're taking this webinar series, let us know. We can get you into the Snap to Work program and you can get credit for this activity, going through this program. So just you can send us an email or just get in touch with us through chat function or through direct message function on this as well. So with that, I'm going to switch us over to stop that, and I'm going to switch over to my presentation here and get us started. And feel free to throw some questions in the chat. We also have a Q&A function. You can raise your hand too, and we can allow you to speak. But right now, I would say just put it in the chat and let us know. And Pam is looking at the chat. Pam and Karina are checking the chat out to make sure that we don't miss anything and we can answer all the questions that you might have. So today we're talking about business planning and what you need to plan and execute that business plan. We start with business planning because it's such an important part of the process of starting a business. Folks really have to think about what you're doing before you advance. So I will say I did see in the chat here that this PowerPoint and the recording will be distributed to everybody who registered. In addition, we will be sending like templates of the Lean Business Canvas, and other resources will come out as well to help you along in creating this plan. And I will also mention, if you want the one-on-one consulting from one of the consultants, that is available as well. Just let us know. You can email us and we can connect you with a consultant. Of course, we have we've got consultants all over the state. So if you happen to be on this video and you're in Greenville or Charleston or Myrtle Beach, you know, we got folks closer to you. Our office is in Orangeburg, and but either way, we can get you with someone who can kind of help you and walk you through one-on-one, which in some cases attending a class is good and you can get general overviews, but it's nice to get that one-on-one attention too. Answer some questions, you know, get some feedback, you know, sounding boards and stuff like that. So what are the session objectives here today? We've got there we go. Understanding the why. That's pretty important. The canvas, the Lean Business Canvas, that goes back to the type of business plan that we'll be going over. There's many. I'll talk about all of them. Research before you dig a ditch, and the financials, a very important part of the plan. The management aspect, operations aspect, and the marketing aspect. So you got 4 parts to the plan. Those are kind of 4 parts to any business as well. So anytime you run or open a business, you're going to have to deal with all 4 of those aspects. So let's move forward. Oh, a little bit about myself. So again, I'm a business consultant. I've got 18 years, actually 23 years experience in small business. I still own a property management company, but I was in business with a medical supply company for about 18 years, owned a restaurant for 7 years. So a lot of small business background. So I've been in your shoes or in the shoes you're about to be in for many, 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 many years. So I can definitely empathize with any small business person. I'm an adjunct business instructor at SC State University and Claflin University. Kind of my specialty areas, every consultant in SBDC is a general consultant, so we can help any business. But we have specialties as well. Mine happens to be in food systems, agriculture, hospitality. Also, I do a lot around energy, property management, as you can imagine, and export. I've more recently started in on working with exporting. And some skill set areas, financial management, grant writing is kind of a unique skill that I have. Although I'll do the spiel on grants right now. So since I just brought it up, because we get this question a lot. This is probably one of the most frequent questions that we get as business consultant is, is there a grant to start my business? The general answer is no, because there's just not a lot of funders out there that are willing to take a risk on a startup. From a grant perspective, the way grants work is, you have a funder, someone who has the money, and then they usually have a mission. And that mission might be, let's just say, sustainability and clean energy, right? They want to make cleaner energy. Maybe they want to promote alternative energy. So they say, hey, the way we're going to reach our mission is we're going to go offer grants to businesses to implement solar energy or wind power or some type of alternative energy, right? Or maybe they can do energy efficiency upgrades to their business to make them, more energy efficient, use less energy, better for the environment, right? And so then they may create a grant. So it's very specific, right? And it kind of falls within the mission of what they want to do. And it's low risk because they can, get documentation to prove that that's going to benefit not only the grantee, but society in general. So there's just, when you get into business startups, there's so much unknown. And, if it's a government grant, the people want to see a return. They want to see the taxpayers making smart investments. And the same thing with any funder, right? But for the most part, there's not grants. There are business competitions. There are things where you can win money, but rarely would you see a grant for a startup, someone going into business to start your business. If you happen to come by one, and I've missed it somehow, I've been doing this for a long time, we'd be happy to look at it and also check, see if it's, the real deal, and also check your eligibility, see if you're eligible for the grant. And depending on the grant, I will write some grants. It just depends on the situation. If I'm familiar with it and comfortable with it, I've helped people write them. But there's all kinds of stuff out there. You never know. And check with your local universities. One thing about being an entrepreneur and going to business is you have to have something called entrepreneurial awareness. Entrepreneurial awareness is basically just, you got to know what's going on, right? You have to be aware of what's going on in your industry, in your community, in business in general, so that you can see when opportunities come across. When some grant that may interest you or apply to you pops up, right? You're aware. You've subscribed to, different newsletters. You follow people on social media. You listen to podcasts that are relevant. You're checking things with universities and other sources, that work in economic development. And you kind of know what's going on. So that's how you find those deals, right? And then of course, if you're clients of SBDC, we'll send out opportunities from time to time when we think it's something that folks could benefit from. So that's the spiel on grant writing. Now there are grants for existing businesses, right? Especially if you've been in business for over 2 years. It's kind of the same with loans and funding. You've kind of proven a track record that you're sustainable, you can be around, you're working on growing, you can find probably more stuff, that revolves around that. So that's the grant spiel. So let's get into it. Causes of small business failures. So I don't know if that's a great way to start a webinar on starting a business, but it's good to know because you got to know where your weaknesses are, right? So that you can, pivot, make adjustments, and be successful. And number one, lack of capital. That probably doesn't surprise anybody. But it takes money to, run a business. Money is like the fuel of a business, right? If you run out of fuel, then everything stops. Can't go any farther. I mean, if it's in the car, I mean, you're just there. You're stopped. I mean, you can't get out of the car and start pushing it, right? But you need fuel to make a business run. And what happens is a lot of people kind of underestimate how much money they might need. And all this is, dependent on the type of business that you're starting. There's some businesses that it doesn't take much capital to get into. And you can kind of like bootstrap it and just, hustle and get it done. Very small businesses. But if you're like opening a restaurant, where it's maybe capital intensive, you need equipment, you need employees, you're going to need all that stuff. It's different. That's different from like a micro business where maybe you're just self-employed. It's just you're starting a consulting business, or you're starting, a landscaping business. Then it's just you. Those are kind of different. And you mightn't get away with a little capital. But if you're really getting into this, you want to grow that business, you're going to need money. And what happens is people just, they don't think of all the things that they're going to have to spend money on, or the working capital they might need to pay people and taxes and other things, right? So then what happens is, they're undercapitalized and then run out of money. And there might be alternatives. If you run out of money, there may not either. So that's definitely one. The next one's inadequate management experience. This is a big one. I get this a lot in the hospitality industry. Folks will come to me and say, I want to open a restaurant. And one of the first questions I ask them, because I was in the restaurant business for a while, is, have you ever worked in a restaurant? And when I opened a restaurant, I'd never worked in a restaurant. Okay. So it's a pretty big risk if you have no experience in that industry or no business experience, So yeah, I'll ask somebody, hey, have you worked in a restaurant? Because usually what happens is they say, hey, I got a great recipe. This is my grandmother's recipes. People love my cooking, and I don't doubt that at all. But production or cooking is only one aspect of a restaurant, right? And then so you also have the back end, accounting, those type things, human resources, and then you've got front of the house, which is dealing with customers, marketing, all that other stuff. That's a lot, and that's a lot more to do than just being a good cook, right? So having management is important. And I usually recommend folks go out, they work. If they're real young, maybe college students. I talk to college kids all the time, and I'm like, hey, go get a job in industries that you're interested in, then open the business in that industry, right? After you've kind of learned, your way around that industry, and get some management experience, understand, the back office, understand marketing. So it helps. And going back to lack of capital, when you go for a loan, and we'll talk about loans later, one of the criteria that a lender will use in scoring, so to speak, your loan, is management. Does this person have management experience, right? If they have zero management experience, never operated business, didn't work in the industry, none of that stuff, it doesn't necessarily rule you out for a loan. It just that might be the thing that puts you either over in getting the loan or not getting the loan, because it'll definitely be points against you, and it'll be a weakness. They would identify it as a weakness of the business. So you got operational infrastructure failures, which is basically when you fail in production, or you fail to fulfill the purpose of your business somehow, or infrastructure fails, like you have equipment and it stops working, and maybe maybe you have a printing business and your printer goes down, right? Yep. And then you can't do anything unless you repair the printer. Hopefully you have the funds or know how to do that. But that would be an infrastructure failure. And lastly, poor marketing. You don't have any customers, right? That can be a very big thing. But the thing about poor marketing is if you're planning in advance, I mean, you're putting all your marketing together and you're understanding that there's a market. So if you're going into something where there's not really a market, there's not really a need, want, or desire, then I mean, you're kind of setting yourself up for failure. So that's part of the research, which we'll talk about a little bit more in the planning process, right? And in your marketing plan, is you have to know the market, you have to know if there's a need, and then you have to create something that communicates with your target audience. Because if you can't communicate with them, they don't know about what you're doing, and then they can't buy from you. So there's a lot of techniques and a lot of channels to do that, but poor marketing can definitely cause failure. So why would you do a business plan? Many reasons why. Is it because someone told you that you needed one? I hope not, because you need to do it for other reasons other than that. But a lot of times, the bank will say, "Hey, you need a business plan." There's a reason the bank or the investor is asking for that business plan. And the reason is they need to understand what you're trying to accomplish. They want to know, what is your mission? What is the mechanics behind the business? What is your marketing plan? How are you going to get the customers? If I give you this money, this investment, how are you going to use it? And how is it going to come back to the bank? How are you paying for it? Right. So yeah, that's why they ask for it and they want to see it. So I do have a lot of folks who come to us and say, "Hey, I went to the bank. They say I need a business plan." And they say, "You need to write it," or they need that somebody needs to do it and that I can help, write it or whatever. It's really, I mean, as consultants, we can't write your business plan. We can only collaborate with you and understand what you're trying to do it, and then, guide you to expressing that on paper, right? But it's hard for us I mean, I don't know exactly what you want to do. I can definitely give you advice on aspects of marketing and all these other things. But it's your business, it's your ideas. So where do you want to go with it, right? So it is your plan, and nobody else can write it for you or create it for you, I should say. I guess we could write it, but we can't create it for you. You need to completely think through the business and understand all the needed components, right? That's a good reason to do it. Because if this is your business, you need to know it inside and out. And knowing it inside and out, the business plan gives you that avenue to do that, right? It gives you the template or the outline to show you where you need to be thinking, or what you kind of need to be thinking about, right? We mentioned some of it right in the introduction, the operations, the management, the marketing, the finances. Those are all areas that you need to be considering. And then the business plan is stepping you through those areas and really, showing you or guiding you to where you need to focus. And where you focus, where your focus goes, your energy goes, right? Your energy flows that way. That's the flow. If you're not thinking about it, then it's going to be left out, and you really need to consider all aspects. You need a roadmap for setting and accomplishing goals. We'll talk a little bit about missions and goals as we go through this as well. Everyone should have goals, because if you can't measure it, how do you know if you're making any progress, right? You have to be able to set these goals, and then you don't have to, I mean, if you don't make a goal, that's okay. But that you didn't make it, right? And is that important or not? I mean, you have to determine that for yourself. But you need the goals, so you have something to strive for and something to measure against. And we'll talk about some different goals that you can set. So tips for writing a plan: be clear about who you are, create a mission statement, and stick to it. So mission statements, they're important. I mean, I know you've probably heard, about mission statements, and I think you understand that most big companies definitely have a mission statement, but you're like, well, does a small company need it? What if it's just me? What if I'm a realtor and I'm just opening my business, just to, I'm self-employed, opening this business just to run my realty company through. Do I really need a mission? Yeah, everybody does, because the mission is your purpose. I mean, it's really your purpose for, establishing the business and the purpose for the business. What is the business trying to accomplish? And missions, there's all types of approaches to missions and how you can develop them. And you can go out there and Google mission statement for various companies, from Nike to Starbucks to you name it. The big ones, they have some interesting and very well thought out mission statements. So there's some great ones out there. What I would do, if you're kind of searching for that mission, so I mean, you start your mission and your vision kind of starts with your values too. I mean, what do you value? And so you think about your values and you think about why you're starting this company, whether it's a restaurant or a consulting company or a landscaping company or whatever it is, why you're doing it. Usually has something to do with people. It doesn't have to do with money. Let's just put that aside right now. Of course, we want to make a profit as a business, right? And we might have goals to, start a side business that we can get out of our current job and be our own boss, right? But that's still not really the mission. And your mission is not to make money. You have somehow a bigger mission than that. I mean, it's for the people that you're serving, right? If it's landscaping, I mean, your mission is, to somehow satisfy these customers, right, in some way. So you have to thinking about it in those terms. But let's just say you were in landscaping. I would look up like bigger landscaping companies and what's their mission, and does that sound, kind of in line with my values and what I'd like. Your mission might still be slightly different, and it would be, but it's a good way to just stimulate brainstorming around what your mission statement can be. Doesn't have to be long or complicated. I mean, it could be very short. There's some that are, like 5 words or less. So, it's just a lot of different things you can do, but it's important, because then the mission guides what you're doing, and your employees and your other stakeholders can look to your mission, and hopefully it would inspire, and also they would understand what you're trying to do, right? That's the big thing. They could read your mission statement and they know what you're doing. They know what you're trying to accomplish, kind of who you are, and it would inspire them somehow, you would think. But it's not just for you either. It's for your stakeholders, which include your customers, your vendors, your everybody, right? And your employees. But real important. And then envision where you will be in 5 years and create a vision statement and work daily to get there. So I think all of us can kind of envision and look down the road and say, in 5 years, where would this company be? Do I have, I might start with just myself, but I envision having like, 10 employees, a facility. Maybe I'm covering, instead of my hometown, maybe I'm covering, the whole state. Maybe today it's just working with folks, directly. Maybe tomorrow or in 5 years, it's e-commerce, going nationwide, exporting, whatever, right? So what's in your vision, right? Or maybe it's more, maybe it's smaller than that. Maybe the vision is that you're just serving your community and you're making a living for yourself, a comfortable living for yourself, right? Taking care of your family. Maybe you see the vision of your company growing to that point, and that's kind of what it does. And it just is there for your community, right? And to serve that. So you need to figure out what that is. You should be able to vision, so you can always see where you're going, like that road map. This is where you're headed, and then you between your mission and vision, that can describe to other people, and they kind of know where you're going. And work daily to get there. You know, you can't. I mean, working towards your vision is kind of like eating an elephant. Y'all probably heard of that analogy. You have to do it one bite at a time, right? So it's just like it starts with habits. Everything starts with habits, right? You create daily habits, and you can change habits too and behaviors. Maybe one behavior or habit at a time, you change it, and then just one little thing, right? And then over time, you just see progress, right? But it's just doing it daily and working towards it. Sell the problem you solve, not the product. This is really a marketing statement. Sell the problem you solve. So you're solving problems for people. You're not trying to sell them a product or a service. They don't necessarily want a product or service. They want a solution to an issue they're having, right? And if you can provide that solution at the best value for them at that current time, then you can make the sale, right? And trying to figure out what that solution is, I mean, that's part of business. I mean, that's what you're creating as an entrepreneur, the business solution. And so I don't have an answer for that necessarily for people, because that's the whole path of starting the business and creating the plan, is trying to figure out, well, what is that business model that's going to be successful? And if I had the answer, I'd probably be doing it right now too. You know, so there's a lot of great ideas out there. It's just you can have a great idea, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's the right time, right place for it. So there's a lot that goes around to it, and also kind of a precursor to businesses is there's business ideas and there's opportunities. And with opportunities, opportunities usually don't come to people who just kind of sit passively and wait for them to hit them, right? Opportunities come when you put yourself out there. As I mentioned, entrepreneurial awareness, being aware what's going on, networking, understanding what you want, as far as, hey, I want to get in this industry, I want this type of business, that type of business. Well, guess what? Start researching it, start understanding what it is, start contacting people in that industry, start networking and telling people that's what you're interested in and putting it out there in the world, because that's when opportunities come back, because now other people know what you do, what you want, and then they might come across something and they say, oh yeah, Miss Smith, I was talking to her the other day and she said she was interested in getting into producing mushrooms. And I only say that because I was on a mushroom farm today. And you can say, oh yeah, this is opportunity where this guy's selling his mushroom farm, or he's doing so well, he needs somebody to come in and help him and partner with him, right? And actually that is the truth. In the mushroom industry, there's not a lot of suppliers, but there's a lot of demand because more people are eating mushrooms. It's a meat replacement for one thing, but chefs want it. People are starting to be interested in it. It's a good source of protein. It's a good nootropic, which it actually helps you, helps your brain, helps you remember things and think more clearly. But anyway, good problem to have, right? Most mushroom producers in South Carolina, like, they sell everything they have and they can't produce enough. So we were actually talking today with his mushroom farm about creating cooperative where, he can go in with another mushroom farmer. If their supply is low, then he can buy from this other farmer, right? So they can work together. That was an opportunity, right? And it just so happened that I knew several of these mushroom farmers, so I could share opportunities. And that's how opportunities happen, right? You're out there, you're talking to people, they know what's happening, they know what you want, so that they can then come back and share that. But just because of the opportunity doesn't mean that, it's right for you or the right time for you or whatever, because there's a whole lot of other things and ideas on the idea front. You can come up with a good idea, but that doesn't mean that the idea is going to work either. Where ideas meet opportunities, and sometimes they're kind of mixed in together, you have something called feasibility. So you come up with a good idea, you have an opportunity, maybe you generated it, or maybe it just kind of came to you somehow. But is it feasible? Is it feasible? So there's really 4 areas of feasibility. The first one is the product feasible. Is the market feasible? Is the management team feasible, right? Do you have the skills and management to back it up? And is it financially feasible? Like, do you've got the money? Can you get access to the money to do this, right? So if you say yes to all 4 of those, then generally the idea or opportunity can move forward. If you say no to one of those aspects of feasibility, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's dead in the water, and that's not a good idea or good, something to proceed with. But it may be a challenge that you have to overcome, or you may have to adjust somehow, for that. If you can't get the money together, for instance, right? Maybe you can't find a loan or financing. Maybe there's an investor. Maybe there's other alternative sources. Maybe it's something where you can start really small and grow. Maybe it's can be crowdsourced. Maybe it can be a lot of other things, right? Maybe you can figure out how to get over that hurdle. But it's interesting the path that kind of leads to opening of the business and how opportunities and ideas work and feasibility. But all that then leads into, we'll talk about a little bit later, is research as well. But we're going to talk about the canvas right now, and this is a lean business canvas. So this is actually a form of a business plan. So there's a lot of business plans out there. Okay, there's a lot of ways you can approach business planning, and there's a lot of reasons that you can write a business plan. There's summary style business plans, which this would be a summary type business plan, which is a very shortened version of a plan. And the concept behind a summary plan is that you're just getting to the point. A lot of business people, they want to get to the point of things, right? In a narrative summary business plan, you have the executive summary, you have some information about marketing, the organizational structure, management, and then finances, right? And projections. And somebody could quickly read your executive summary and look at your finances and get a good picture of whether this is a good idea or not. So this kind of captures the same essence of a summary business plan, but just in one page, even smaller. I mean, boom, they could really figure out real quick, what you're trying to do, and if it's worth digging further to, explore whether they can fund you or invest in you or, whatnot. So generally a summary or a lean business canvas is good for, possibly loans, working out your ideas, early stage. There's another type of business plan, which is called a full business plan. A full business plan might be 10 to 15 pages, and you're just going more in depth. You may write a full business plan if a funder comes back and says, hey, I saw your lean business canvas, or I saw your executive summary. I'm really interested in funding this, but I need a little bit more. Need some more information. So maybe a full plan gets into a longer narrative about your marketing plan, about your management team, about other aspects of the business. Maybe some more information on financial projections, 3 years, and break-even analysis, and all types of things like that that can then really show the funder, what you're doing. And also, you get these business plan competitions where you're competing for money. They're going to want to see a full business plan and not a summary plan. And then the third type of business plan is what you would call an operational plan, which is like an SOP. And the operational plan can be up to 100 pages long or longer. And basically, it's a plan that spells out every single thing your company does. And like, if I wanted to train somebody, I could like hand them this and say, here, this is it. This is what we do. And they could read it and they wouldn't need to talk to anybody else. They'd know exactly how to do everything, right? So you know, that is a large undertaking. Actually, a lot of businesses just contract that out and get people to write that for them. In some cases, if your business is accredited, you're going to have something like that. It's basically like a policies and procedures manual, right? But it's a full length version. You know, it's kind of up to the business whether you want to go that far. You know, but it could be of value depending on your size of business, and worried about succession planning, and what happens if something happens to this person, and we don't know what their job is, and the replacement, so those type things. But in our case, we're talking a lean business canvas here, which is going to give us a snapshot, because you're pretty early on in creating this business, and you're going to make adjustments, right? Inevitably, you will make adjustments because you'll try something, it didn't work, that was your assumption, and so you're going to try something different and see if that does work. And this allows you to make those adjustments pretty easily, and just to get your ideas on paper. But the way you go about filling this little chart out is you kind of start on the edges first. I actually didn't create this slide or this presentation, but in this case, they have you starting over here on the right hand side with customer segments, and then moving over to the problem as number 2. I'd probably flip flop those, but honestly, it would be up to you. Customer segments, I mean, that is a marketing aspect of your approach to business, because with customer segments, you're looking at your industry market first of all, right? You got to figure out what industry you're going into. So if it's landscaping, construction, hospitality, agriculture, I'm very familiar with all those industries, especially the hospitality and agriculture industries. But let's just say you're going into the hospitality industry. You're going to you need to know whether you should be going into the hospitality industry or not. So a lot of research to go into how that industry is doing. But your customer segmentation is an aspect of taking your markets and breaking them down, right, into segments that are applicable to your business product and service. And then out of your customer segments, which is here, it says a list of target customers and users, you're going to figure out your target customers, or your target market. Y'all probably heard that, target markets. So customer segments, target markets come out of your segments. Segmentation can be done in many different ways. It can be done geographically, like if you are in in Columbia, you may segment your service areas just maybe Richland County or Lexington County, or it may be the Midlands, right? But you segmented it, right? And then you can segment by socioeconomic, or economic status. So breaking down how much people make, right? By median household income, by things like that. And you don't necessarily, it depends on your product and service. You don't have to be going after people with a lot of money. That helps with a lot of things, right? You might need people who need discretionary funds, and so you would say, hey, that's a target, that's a segment. But like, I actually operated a nonprofit program called Food Share, and the Food Share boxes, the target audience is SNAP EBT recipients. or people in rural areas where there was a high need for access to fresh fruits and vegetables, right? And to, you know, folks who have SNAP and have families, and they want their families to have affordable fresh fruits and vegetables, because in this particular program, you could get, there's something called Healthy Bucks, and you can get for a box of fruits and vegetables, $15, you can get it for 5. So it's a huge value to SNAP recipients. And then they could help feed their family with healthy food, right? Because healthy food's expensive. You know, you go to the produce section, you know, produce is expensive and it's perishable, highly perishable. So you've got to eat it fairly fast, right? That's part of what makes it expensive. But anyway, that target audience is not high income, right? So that's just an example of how you might target in on a segment, using and there's other things, segments like you talk about lifestyles, you know, your segment. So like, for instance, if you have a vegan restaurant or a vegetarian restaurant, then folks with maybe those type of lifestyles would be your target. If you created like a okay, I got a client that I had the other day, and he invented a outdoor line of activewear. So he's a hunter. So they hunt down in the low country of South Carolina, and they were getting eaten up by bugs, and they were sweating, and they're like, they got to make something, you know, that helps with this heat in South Carolina, and fishing and stuff like that. So they went out and invented this thing, got a patent on this material, and you know, were able to come up with a whole active outdoor line of clothing. And so that what's their target audience, right? So maybe geographically speaking, it's just the low country of South Carolina or South Carolina. Of course, they are going e-commerce so they can reach a more national or regional level. But you know, their target audience is, you know, you start to think about lifestyle, well, it's hunters, right? Or outdoorsmen, to get a little more general. In the outdoorsmen, so you can get fishermen, you can get hunters, you can get folks that just like to be on boats, you know, or maybe they're bird watchers. You know, they need camouflage, it's the same thing, but they're just watching birds. So see how you can then start to target those little segments and figure out exactly who your customer is. And you don't need to waste marketing money on anybody else, like that's not going to wear active wear hunting gear, right? Or active wear outdoor gear, I should say. So if you're vegetarian, or if you're a vegan restaurant, I mean, your best bet is try to get people with that lifestyle, or who are kind of, you know, interested in that, versus folks that, you know, you don't think would be. So anyway, customer is segmenting, big part, right? And there's something down here on early adopters. Early adopters are good. You want early adopters because people in general they follow trends. So if you go into a restaurant and, you know, nobody's eating a certain, you know, thing on the menu, then and you don't see anybody ordering that, I mean, you might not order it, right? But then if you go in there and everybody's eating this, you know, menu item, you know, then you're like, oh, that must be good. Now I'm going to try that menu item as well. And, you know, I heard about it. So what happens is people want other people to kind of test it out, right? To say that it's good. And the early adopters are kind of more risk-taking type people. They're willing to go out and try new things, and they got money to spend on some things, and they do it, right? And then so you want to focus on early adopters because they adopt they buy your product or service, and then they tell other people. And then the bulk or the majority of people, right, are then saying, oh, they're doing it, so I'm going to do it. That's where your early adopters come in. And so honestly, your early adopters are only a small percentage of the population. I don't know what the exact percent is, maybe 10% are early adopters, or 20, I don't know. But everybody else follows them and kind of waits for the reaction on it. So that's why it's important. Who would your early adopter be? And you need to focus early on them so they can come in and be a patron and then go out and tell everybody else. So anyway, if you go on to number 2, you got to solve a problem. I mean, if you're not solving a problem, then you're gonna have trouble. Because you remember the slide a few things back that said that you're not selling a product, you're solving a problem, a solution. So you gotta figure out what solutions that you have. Some good examples I've seen. There was a guitar company that was established, and it was a ladies guitar, female guitar company, right? So she had noticed that there were no female guitars, no guitars like specifically kind of marketed towards females on the market, right? And so she created like a female lined, I guess, like, pink guitars and bedazzled guitars and smaller sized maybe for women, and just marketed, feminine, for the feminine market or whatever, right? So the problem was every guitar kind of looked masculine or looked the same, and it's like there was nothing for like, what certain women wanted. So that was a problem. Solution, she created a line. A lot of problems out there to be solved, a ton of them. Whether it's feasible to solve it, sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. If you look at Elon Musk is trying to solve the problem of having a car that doesn't run on gas, right? He's got a totally electric car, and affordable, right? Eventually an affordable electric car that goes far, that accelerates similar to a regular car, that does everything we can do in a regular car, but doesn't use gas, right? So we can get off of dependence of, using oil. The problem is that oil is a resource that is not renewable. And then one day it's going to run out. Probably, hopefully not in our lifetimes, but eventually it will. So yeah, that's another problem. So you got to figure out what's your problems, list them, and some alternatives. And then, if you start going through this, your solution, what's the solution to that problem? And I mentioned metrics, because it's hard to see if you're making progress unless you're creating some type of metrics, right? That you are have a goal. If you don't have metrics, you don't know if you are making it anywhere. Every management cycle, there's 4 stages to management cycles. It goes through 4 stages. So first one's planning, the next one's organization or organizing, then there's leading, and then there's control. So basically what that means is you have to plan for things like you would do in a business plan, like what we're doing now. Once that plan is in place and you've set metrics, hopefully, right? Goals, then you have to organize everything. You have to put all the resources together to get it done. You need to get the people, you need to get the equipment, you need to get the money, you need to get all this stuff and organize it, right? And then once you put your business together, it's all organized, motivation or leading, right? Then you have to lead your people through it, or yourself if you're self-employed. But even if you're self-employed, you have a team around you, right? And then we'll talk about that a little bit later. And then, you're motivating your employees, you're motivating yourself to accomplish your mission. And then there's controlling. Controlling is when you are accounting for everything that you did, right? There's the actual financial management of accounting, but then you're accounting for your goals to see, this is kind of the looking back and saying, okay, I planned, I made these goals. Did I meet them? Did I exceed them? If I exceeded them, why? If I didn't meet them, then why? What do I need to change? So if you made smart goals or metrics, then you might be able to say, well, if I didn't meet them, then maybe I need to change this or this or this. And then the whole cycle starts over again for eternity, in perpetuity. that cycle is always a never-ending cycle: planning, organizing, leading, controlling. Some people do it on annual basis, daily basis, quarterly basis, or whatever, but usually quarterly, monthly, quarterly. It just depends on the business and the business unit. Um, but yeah, so key metrics are important. Like, good metric is sales, top end sales or top line sales, which is your gross sales. Hey, I want to make $100,000 this year in sales, and top line, just in sales, not profit. So if you have the goal to make $100,000, then you're going to know if you make it or not, right? But you might have other productivity goals, like, I want to sell 500 units. Maybe it's not a dollar goal, it's a unit goal. Maybe it's, I want to do 20 units per hour, or it could be a lot of things. Maybe I want to hire 5 employees. It could be whatever. You create the goal. It just needs to be in line with it needs to be about some value. Knowing if you made it, that it could create value, right? You can get very extensive or very just limited, right? So I'm not really going in these in order, as you can see now, of the numbers. But I like to keep the ones on the bottom to last, to tell you the truth, when I'm talking about this. But if you go over to like your unfair advantage and your channels, so your unfair advantage is something that cannot be easily copied or bought. You need some type of advantage, right? And because you need to differentiate yourself from the competitor. Because if what you're doing is of interest to people, there's always competition, especially if if there's no competition, there might be a reason. Like, if nobody else is doing it, it may not be money to be there. There's probably not money to be made there. Not necessarily, but especially if you're like a really early stage business into this and emerging. So I talked about the mushrooms, like mushroom production. That's an emerging industry. So anybody that's in it now is early stage. Not a lot of competition. But you get into vegetable farming, like squash, collards. There's hundreds, thousands of people doing that. A lot of competition, but anyway. So, but you need an unfair advantage. You need to have, maybe you have a certain maybe you've got a certain brand that you can carry that nobody else can carry this brand. I got some clients that have licenses on certain brands, right? And so if you want that brand, you have to go to them to get that particular brand, right? So that's an unfair advantage because nobody else can carry that brand. And a lot of people are able to do that. They get exclusive on a brand. An example of that is, franchises, like Dunk, or like Krispy Kreme donuts. You want to open a Krispy Kreme? Nope, can't do it. Somebody's already got the exclusive on that in Columbia. I get that question all the time in Orangeburg. Oh, I want to open a Krispy Kreme. Nope, the guy at Columbia owns the Orangeburg area, so you can't get that. That's an unfair advantage, right? You can't open a Krispy Kreme, even if you were eligible. You had all the money in the world to open it and the expertise. You can't. He's got it. And that is a great unfair advantage because people love Krispy Kreme donuts. It's like that with a lot of exclusive brands and things like that. So if you can get that brand, I'm the only place you can get that brand from, right? That's an example of an unfair advantage. But there's a lot of different types of unfair advantages. That maybe you're the only person in town, maybe you somehow got it to where your prices are the lowest and people really can't get that low, or maybe it could be a lot of things. Maybe you have a certain service that goes along with it, the other people with a secret formula that other people don't have. Like maybe you have lifetime extended warranty on a product that no other company has a lifetime warranty on. Unfair advantages, right? So you need to figure out what those are. And then channels is a path to your customer. Channels, channels kind of goes along a little bit with a business model, but how do you get your product to the customer, and who is your customer? I mean, you can have you can be a wholesaler and your customer is the retailer, right? So you're not the final destination. You're not the final consumer. Or your customer's not the final consumer. They're going to sell it to somebody else, right? And in that, you can be the manufacturer, right? And you manufacture, you sell to a wholesaler who sells to the consumer. And that's the path to the consumer when it's consumed. You can be in the middle, you can be in the middle of the middle. And why I say it like that, because I mean, there are business models now where you don't have to have any inventory, any employees, anything, and you're just essentially a marketer, right? And so you create like a website or a storefront. People buy from you. You order it from somebody else. They fulfill the order. It comes from their warehouse, and they deliver it to the consumer with your name on it. All you did was package it and market it under your company brand, right? Everybody else did all other aspects of the business. That's a channel. I mean, that's the way that it can be done. In a way, you're direct to consumer, but you might be working with other wholesalers. But yeah, when you are selling to retailers, you're not direct to consumer. That's called B2B, business to business. And then the other version, of course, is e-commerce. That's where you're selling through online channels, a lot of shipping. So yeah, you got to figure out, well, what's the path to the customer, right? How are you going to do that? It's a different way of doing business. B2B is much different than direct to consumer, and you can do combinations of both. You can sell to retailers and to the consumer, right? A lot of people do that now. The middle, unique value proposition, that's the UVP. Single, clear, compelling message that turns an unaware visitor into an interested prospect. That compelling message is basically, where's the value in your business? It kind of aligns with the idea of unfair advantage. And then in that, what is your differentiation, right? What makes you different from, if you're opening a restaurant, it's a barbecue restaurant, well, how's that different from, the other barbecue restaurant in town? Or if you are, whatever you're doing, what makes you different? What's your unique value proposition? You have to figure out what that is. Have a statement and be able to communicate that to people so that they understand, oh, well, that's why I want to come to you. If you think about Walmart, low prices every day, that's the Walmart way. They're the low price leader. That's their value proposition. But you can't compete with that because you ain't beating Walmart, right? On price. As a small business, you have to be value added, you can't compete on value with Walmart and the Dollar Tree and all these other value providers and trying to get the lowest price, because you need more of a margin as a small business. You need a higher profit margin. So your product is probably going to be more expensive than similar products that other people sell. It's just you add value in other places. Where can you add value in other places? Maybe it's your opinion or your service that comes along with it. Maybe it's there's some other unique aspects of what you created that are different than those products that are, sold at Walmart or sold at, on Amazon or whatever. But you got to just figure out what that is and express it to your customer so that they know why they're paying more, right? I've got a lifetime warranty. I've got, you get professional consulting service along with this product. It's a subscription wrapped up that comes, once a month. It's a lot of, it could be a bunch of things, but yeah, that's it. You got to come up with that UVP. And on the bottom here, you got cost structure and revenue streams. These are the financial aspects of the business. I usually end with this on the Lean Business Canvas. Your cost structure is, I mean, what expenses do you have to make to operate the business? Basically, fixed and variable costs. The difference between the two, fixed costs don't change, like your rent, or if you buy a building, your mortgage payment, that's not going to change, right? Variable costs, on the other hand, like your labor goes up and down, right? Depends on how many people you're employing. Variable costs basically change. So if your sales go up, maybe those costs go up, right? So your cost of goods a lot of times is variable. Cost of goods are, the inputs, such as if you have an inventory based business, let's just say you're a restaurant, your cost of goods, food, that's one of them, right? Food, that's a big one. So if you have more sales, then your cost of your food's gonna probably go up as well. So that's variable. But other fixed costs, so you got to list all of that. What would all your costs be? So you can understand your structure and where you're going to have to spend money, right? And then on your revenue streams, what are your sources of revenue? That's pretty important. Is it sales of a product? Is it sales of a service? And then you can break those down if you want to into the different products and what kind of profit centers would they be. Like in a typical restaurant, your revenue streams is just not food. Okay. So you would need to break that down. So you have drinks, right? You have alcoholic and non-alcoholic drinks. Those are both revenue streams. And then you have dinner, and you have lunch service, and you have catering, right? So these are all different, where different streams of revenue would come in, kind of categorizing them, just to be very thoughtful about where the money's coming from. So yeah, that's Lean Business Canvas. So really, a part of creating a business plan is just thinking through each one of these components and writing it down and getting it on paper. There's something to writing things too. You think about stuff, talk about stuff, but once you start writing it, there's just something magical about that. When it gets on the paper, it becomes something that just is real and out there. And I actually use whiteboards a lot. I got a big whiteboard. So, with whiteboards, you can write what you want and then erase it. But of course, I write it and then I take a picture of it with the phone and then I erase it. So that's something you can do, because you can kind of just think and, erase it real quick and then write it over. And, then when you get what you want up there, you take a picture of it. So target market, 20% of your clients are driving 80% of your business. This is based on, it's called the Pareto law. Pareto is like a old Italian scientist or philosopher. I don't know, one of those. But yeah, that rule of thumb can be applied to a lot of things in life, not just your clients, but essentially, a small percent of your clients will be driving a lot of your business. So you probably want to focus and make sure they're happy, for sure, especially if they're a repeat type business. But the other 80% you can't ignore either. You have to keep focused. But I think the idea behind this slide is to, that 20%, you want to put your marketing funds towards those people, and because that would give you your best chance. Pains and gains, problems, solutions. We've talked about this a little bit. Got to create some solutions to people's problems, and that's how you're going to make money. If you can really find good solutions. Uber, for instance, I mean, can y'all imagine before Uber was here? I don't know that transportation was necessarily a problem, but the people who created Uber or Lyft, I mean, they definitely saw an opportunity with the advent of technology, smartphones, paying with PayPal and, electronic payment and stuff like that. They took advantage of that. And I guess the problem would have been, you know, um, that how do you, get transportation without having to call a cab, right? And how can you use technology to do that? So they solved it. They created a platform to be able to do that, and now you have Uber. Some very smart people out there. So you got problems, solution, success. So research before you dig a ditch. Do some research. So there's something called a SWOT analysis. And what I like to say is you can do this for an existing business or for a business that you're trying to start, right? And what SWOT stands for is strength, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. And strength and weaknesses have to do with internal aspects of your business. Opportunities and threats have to do with external aspects. So if you have not, started your business, strengths and weaknesses can still be identified, maybe with, the resources that you have available to you, maybe a strength or weakness, your management experience, your skill set, the type of people who are in your community and can work at your business, even the customers in your community. But it's more so, I think, on opportunities and threats. You can really be decisive on understanding what's out there, and as far as opportunities go, and listing all that stuff out. So do a SWOT on your business in your industry, and honestly, do a kind of a SWOT, or they call it a competitor analysis, right? You can take the aspects of a SWOT, strength, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, and then you can apply them, to your competition, and kind of grade them on different aspects of where you think they're strong, where you think they're weak, and so forth and so on. And then that's a way of finding, it's a kind of a gap analysis when you look at your competition, which, all right, the cat just walked up here. Had to throw the cat away. The competition is, you want to see where you can come in and where your opportunity is, right? So if they're not doing certain things, well, that might be a value proposition that you could offer to your customers because none of the competition is doing it, or they're real strong at this. So maybe you want to kind of like steer away from, something they're super strong in, and find where you can be the strong person, right? So this SWOT can not only be performed, for your business, but also for as a competitor analysis as well. So internal factors, products and services that you offer. These are where's the strengths, where's the weaknesses, right? Operationally, where are you weak and strong? How's your marketing looking? Management, financials, intangibles, and so forth. And externally, what are target markets, the demographics and the trends? How's the economy doing? I guess that's actually a pretty good topic right now because we have inflation. Inflation is going on for many different reasons, and that basically means that your dollar is worth less than it was yesterday. It's worth less today than it was yesterday. You can't buy as much with a dollar that you could, yesterday. And certain industries have experienced inflation more than others. The food industry is actually, you can go to the grocery store and see things cost more, right? You go to the restaurants, cost more. I can tell you farmers are feeling the inflation because fertilizers and pesticides have like almost doubled in price, in some cases more than that. So that doesn't mean anything to you right now, but guess what? Next year, they're gonna have to, I mean, it's included in their price. And so, they're gonna have to get their money back. And it's gonna come come through the markets, right? So we'll see more inflation in food. But you have to, how's the economy doing, right? Do people have money to spend? And what are they spending it on? Industry trends, how's the industry doing? You can do an industry analysis. That's a deep dive into your industry. And by the way, the SBDC, we can pull a report on your industry. It's kind of a lengthy report, but it's very interesting. It can tell you, if it's how the industry is doing. Is it declining? Is it prospering? What's the profit margins in that industry typically on average? So that's something we can run for you. But that's part of your research, right? Industry trends, that's an external factor too. You want to jump into an industry that's like on the way down. So you go open a Blockbuster Video. No. I mean, that's in the media industry is the bigger industry. And then that's in the home video industry, inside the media industry. And the home video industry is basically like, unless your business is, I just wouldn't open a Blockbuster. Let's just say that, because the industry trends are kind of against it. Because the trend is that, it's digital download, right? You got Netflix, you got Amazon Prime, you got other things like that. People still do buy DVDs, but a lot of stuff's pirated too. You have to deal with pirates in that area. But see, that's looking in the industry though, and you would know that when you researched it. What's the politics, the legal aspects of it? Legally speaking, like a lot of industries, there are barriers to industry, such as you have to have a license. So you can't sell real estate that is not your own, right? Without a license. You have to be a licensed realtor, a real estate agent. And you can't even cut hair, without a license. There are so many things where you need licenses, so you have to check into that. And you also have to check to see that all the legalities, business licenses are in place and things like that. Of course, the environment is a factor too, and socio-cultural competition. Talked about competitive analysis a little bit already. So let's get into the financials. And okay, so accounting equation. So financial management is important to any business, because guess what? The cash is the fuel of the business, right? So you have to be able to cash flow a business. And what that means is you got to be able to pay your bills and pay your employees and still have a little bit of money left over for stuff that comes up, right? Because if the cash flow, ends, then you're in trouble. But there's a lot of different ways to manage cash flow, and you can float expenses, depending on how your income's coming in. You can get lines of credit. There's a lot of different ways you can do it. But anyway, cash is very important in a business, and so is accounting, right? So is financial management, being able to manage that cash. The accounting equation, assets equals liabilities plus equity plus retained earnings, incomes plus incomes minus expenses. I did not make this slide, but basically you have three. Let's see what the next slide looks like. Hold on. Oops. All right, you've got the financial statements. There's three financial pieces. There's the CAT balance sheet, there's a statement of cash flows, and there's a profit and loss statement. So your balance sheet is basically a snapshot of your business in its valuation kind of at one particular point in time. So like today, March the 1st, 2022, boom, this is how much you have in assets, this is how much you have in liabilities, right? On that given day. Assets are anything that you own, essentially. Cash, investments, real estate. Real estate would be considered a long-term asset. Investments may also probably be considered long-term. Also, there's other assets like accounts receivable and inventory. And then there's liabilities. It's what you owe. So it's what you own, assets, and what you owe, liabilities, which could be loans, debts, debt to short-term or current debt, they call it, to vendors, to the utility company, to whoever you owe money to, right? Whenever you subtract your assets from your liabilities, you get the equity that is available in the business. So that's kind of a valuation. A lot of people do not really look at the balance sheet very often, and you don't really need it until you need a loan. I mean, you need it because it's good to know, where you stand on, your liabilities and your assets. But, a bank wants to see your balance sheet because they want to see how much you have and how much you owe, and then how much equity you have in the business. And sometimes they can loan against that equity, or that gives them an indication, if you're liquid. So if you're liquid, if your business is liquid, that means if you sold all your assets today and paid off all your liabilities, you would actually have money. And however much money you had there left, that's basically kind of what I would call the asset value of your business. That doesn't necessarily mean that's the true value of business. That's like a book value, right? But the true value might incorporate other things. But that's kind of a complex subject. But anyway, balance sheet just kind of shows you a snapshot of what you owe and what you own. A more important financial statement is the income statement or the profit and loss statement. And income is this is what affects your revenues. Your income is basically the money that you have coming in based on sales. So it's pretty important. You can actually categorize them in income pretty complexly, or you can be very simple and just be like income. But when it shows up on your financial statement, the more detailed you are, probably the more information you can get back out of it. And I'm not going to go too terribly deep into finances because we will have a whole nother session on this. But it is important to, if you can have a separate bank account and run everything through that, at least all of your income, all your expenses, at least how much money you have in your account at the end of the month. And it would be an indicator of the health of your business, not necessarily a great judge, because it's just kind of showing you what's going in, what's going out. It's harder to analyze it unless you have an accounting software like QuickBooks or Wave Apps. So you can dump all the information into your account, into one of those accounting softwares. You can categorize each expense and income and through creating what you call a chart of accounts. A chart of accounts is kind of like categorizations of income and expenses. And then you can really see where everything's being spent, right? And you can get real sharp on that, and it's very helpful. So understanding your profit and loss is important because it can show you, you have, like I said, revenue or income at the beginning. Then you have cost of goods sold, which is an expense. And usually that is subtracted from your revenues, and then you get gross profit. And then gross profit is basically after you subtracted everything that would go into that product. You wouldn't have cost of goods sold for a service. You'd only have it if you're selling products. Then that's when you get gross profit. And then out of gross profit, you would pay your overhead or your operating expenses. And that's your utilities, your insurance, your labor, your, everything else basically, right? And then at the very bottom of a profit and loss statement is your net profit, or some people just call it profit, or it could be a loss, net profit or net loss. And that's when people say, give me the bottom line. You've heard that statement, or your bottom line, profit. That's like what you're, that's what you're taking home. Well, maybe not taking home, but that's what you've made. And most people look at a P&L on a monthly basis. So you can look back, say, how did I do in January? Well, I made this much money, I spent this much money, and there was, $10,000 left over. So you made a $10,000 net profit, right? So it sounds pretty good. You look at February, how did I do? I made a loss of $100. Okay, I lost $100. So what happened? Sometimes when you look at things on a month-to-month basis, maybe that's too short of a period of time. So you look at it on a quarterly basis, over the first period, actually made a net of $12,000. So, hey, maybe that's good, right? So you can see trends, you can see if you're making money. And if you aren't, like I say, sometimes that $100 February was $100 loss. Well, maybe you waited to pay something in February that was supposed to be paid in January, and it just came up on the February P&L. So then it made it look, different. Or maybe you paid something down, like a big bill. You want to just pay it off. And so it made your profit and loss. So sometimes you have to look at that over a quarterly period to get, or just look at it a trend over time, right? But very important, the profit and loss is the most important, financial statement, in my opinion, because where if you have to cut expenses, you can see what you're spending, you can kind of calculate, and you can also, there are ratios, industry ratios, where you can say, well, other people in my industry spend 5% of their gross sales is spent on utilities, and I'm spending 15%. Something's wrong. Or 20% of their sales is spent on labor, and I'm spending 40% on labor. So are you overstaffed? Well, for the industry you are. So why? And then you can try to figure that out. Cash flow is also extremely, extremely important. Cash flow, a good process to work with cash flow statements is to, if look back over the year and see kind of how your cash comes in, because you could be seasonal, right? Cash might all come in the summer. Maybe you're at the beach and you have a surf shop at the beach. Well, you make all your money over the summer and you don't do anything in the winter. And so you can see, you can know that your cash is coming in the summer and that you're going to be down in the winter. So you might make your inventory purchases in the spring, right? And then boom, you're making money, you're paying for that inventory over the summer. And then, you're kind of setting aside money for, rent and utilities and very low labor costs in the winter. So understanding your cash flow and how it comes in and out is very important. And if you don't manage cash flow properly, you get in trouble. But there's a lot of different ways to do that. So management, we're going to management. Victorious warriors win first and then go to war, while defeated warriors go to war first and then seek to win. So I guess what that's saying is that, you're planning in advance, right? You're going in with a mindset, first of all, to win. And I think, honestly, that's huge. Attitude and mindset. You have to be optimistic and positive, because you got to put those vibes out there and be sure of yourself that you're going to succeed, and it will happen, right? That's how it works. You created your vision, you have your mission, you're going into it with a positive mindset, you're putting out positive vibes, and it should come back. And you should succeed. You got to go in with that mindset. Got to. You're going to hit bumps in the road, right? No doubt. It will happen a good bit, but you can get over that and just be positive for sure. Some things to consider under management. Your team is extremely important. And your team, I mean, you may not have any employees, so it might just be you, but you still have a team because you have maybe an accountant, a banker, a insurance guy or gal, a consultant like an SBDC consultant or advising team or a team of people that you trust that can advise you. You have the utility company, they're on your team, whether you like paying them or not. They're kind of like a contributor to what you're doing, right? Like you can't, if you have a restaurant, you can't operate your restaurant without power. And you'd be surprised at what people like that can do for you. But anyway, so who's on your team, right? You got to build that team. And as far as your management experience, if you are very experienced in management, that's great. If not, go out and educate yourself and take classes on management training and whatnot, to kind of up your skills there. Compensation plans, I mean, when you're starting out, you may be a sole proprietor, you may be paying yourself out of net profits. I won't go too deep into that, but pay yourself. A lot of people run businesses and don't pay themselves for years, and that might can be okay if you have like partner or spouse that can support you, or you just plan for it that way. But eventually you're gonna have to pay yourself. Okay, this is you got to be sustainable, right? So you need to figure all that out. And there's if you can pay yourself, there's different ways to do that. So that's where you create a compensation plan. Training for your employees, for yourself, management style. I won't really go into that. There's a lot of those. There's courses you can take on management styles. A lot of times it has to do with your personality too. It's hard to change your style sometimes based on your personality, but you might can adapt your personality to the style that best fits, that type. Succession planning, I think I mentioned that earlier. Succession planning is important. If you want the business to continue on after you. Operationally speaking, some considerations: time, equipment, supplies, people, power, alternative plans. Yeah, you need to think about all of these. And under financial management, this being a startup webinar, I didn't really talk about startup expenses. One of the things you're going to have to do, and we'll talk probably more, it'll be talked about more in the financial section under the third webinar. But you need to consider everything it's going to cost you to start this business, and don't go in undercapitalized, right? So you be a little, I guess, overshoot what you think it might cost to start the business. But because there's going to be equipment, supplies, power, people, all this stuff costs money. Just to get started from day one, you hadn't made the first dollar, right? So you need to figure that out. And that's how you kind of figure out what your loan would be, and then project out into the future, working capital, that type thing, if you need to borrow money. But time is a consideration, equipment, alternative plans, all these you need to consider in your operations. And I won't go too much into operations because it's just so many different types of ways you can go with that. Policies and procedures, I touched on this when we talked about types of business plans. When I talked about a operational plan, essentially it's policies and procedures. They're good to have, especially as you grow. And things can get kind of crazy. The more people you bring on, the business grows, it gets bigger. You need policies and procedures to keep things in order and have systems in place, right? When you're small, sometimes you get away with not having a whole lot of them. But as you grow, that's when you really need to consider the P&P. And if your intention is to grow fast, you might want to start with, policies and procedures, SOPs, standing operating procedures, right off the bat. A lot of times contractors will write these for you for your industry specific, depending on what industry you're in. You can do it yourself. You can find templates and write them as well. Marketing, this is our last section, marketing. Honestly, I think this is, when you're starting a business, I think marketing is like really important. I think you have to get your marketing together. I mean, obviously you got to get the money together, but you almost need to get the marketing together first so you can know how much money you need to get together to support promotion, to support other aspects of your marketing plan. I do a lot of webinars just on marketing. And Karina is going to do the marketing section next week, which I think is just so important, because it really encompasses a lot. And this slide says marketing without data is like driving with eyes closed. Yeah, you need data to really support that where you're investing your time and money and effort is paying dividends, right? Are you getting customers out of it? Quality customers? There's a different converted sales. You can like do promotions on Facebook or Instagram or social media and get 1 million likes, 100,000 likes, whatever. But if you didn't get a sale, did it matter? Also just tracking, sales and analytics and data and, how conversions happen is important in marketing, very important in marketing. Data is extremely important in marketing. And this is the last slide, I think, and then we'll answer any questions. The 4 P's of marketing. This has been around, this is a theory. It's been around for a long time. Actually, it's evolved, but in my opinion, everything still falls within the 4 P's. But so you got product, promotion, place, and pricing. Your product, in marketing, you have to come up with product, right? And that could be a service as well. That kind of falls under product. So what is this product and what does it look like? And what are the characteristics and attributes that go along with this product? Is it a pink guitar? Is it a consulting service that comes with guarantees? I mean, is it, what is this product? Is it so I have a client, Martian Mill, and they're a mill. So they mill, they mill grits and cornmeal, and they do rice, and I think they have 16 products. Okay. And the way, and I'll flip over real quick and show you this, is just as a real Martian Mill. You got to think about what your product is. So their product, Stone Ground Goodness, they're on Edisto Island, and look at their product here. Part of their product is this packaging, right? You see the packaging that they chose? I mean, there's reasons they chose these colors, right? They're in grocery stores. You go see that pink bag right there real quick in the grocery store. In this gold bag. And then here's their mascot, which is a marsh hen. They have this whole story behind this marsh hen too, right? And they've got t-shirts and they've got other products. They extended the line with these other things. That's a candle. But their core products are, grits and peas and rice and things like that. And if, but all that's a part of their marketing, part of their product. Choosing, well, how big is that grits sampler? It's like looks like it's about 1.5 pound bag. That's part of your product. How did they decide 1.5 pounds? Why not 2 pounds? Why not 1 pound? That's a part of your marketing. You got to figure all that out. And then you see the pictures and how they did everything. I mean, that's all product, right? That's part of figuring out what your product is going to be, what you're selling, number one, how does it look, the packaging, everything that comes with it, right? Promotional has to do with how you communicate your product to the public and how you sell it, right? So promotional includes like advertising, public relations, product placement, strategic alliances, all types of things like that. Any type of, I won't say gimmick, but tactic, I should say, any kind of tactic to sell, right? A lot of different ways to do that. Social media marketing these days, Instagram, you name it. There's a lot of platforms to sell on these days. You can use third-party platforms like eBay, Amazon, all those kind of things, right? So promotionally, how are you going to get in front of people's face, really, so that they can see it and see that it's there, it exists to buy it. But you created the product to begin with, like the grits. I mean, if I could see grits in a plain package, or I could see the Marsh End Mill grits, which was ground with, South Carolina grown corn, right? And it has all these other things, these claims or whatever. It's hand ground. I've seen the lady in there doing it. It's so there's all those things, right? That's part of your product. And then you have to promote that to people, and so they can understand that story and understand what they're buying. And now those grits cost $12 for that 1.5 pound bag. You can buy grits for what, $1.50 for Jim Dandy or whatever it's called, or Dandy. But you can pay $12 for their grits. That's a value add, right? And where's the value add? Hand ground, all this other in the farms, small farm. They bought it from small farms. A whole slew of things. Anyway, promotion, you got to come up with promotional strategies and how you're going to get out there, and then you can get into Korean's going to get into a lot of that stuff next week. Place goes back to describes the channels of distribution, which I went over in the Lean Business Canvas. What channels are you using, how what's the path to the customer. That's kind of place. Are you a wholesaler, are you a retailer, e-commerce, do you have a facility, is a warehouse, place. And place is also known as distribution. They just call it place to sound, to make 4 Ps. Pricing is another thing. I mentioned like the Marsh End Mill is about $12 a bag or so. Versus, regular grits is a couple dollars a bag for maybe the same size. So that's, you got to figure out your pricing. So why is it $12 a bag, right? I mean, there's different ways you can do that. That gets into positioning. Your pricing helps, and all this is called a marketing mix, which can help create a position in the market. So, those grits, I would position those grits as, kind of like high end in the market, right? And most small business products should be fairly on the high end side. But yeah, I mean, you have to figure out where's your price. I mean, you don't want to underprice yourself, because you will not make a profit, and you won't be sustainable if you're not priced correctly. But there's market pricing too. So in a way, you have to find a balance where it's priced just right for the value that people are willing to pay, right? And if they're not willing to pay, then price might be an issue, or you're not offering enough value. So you got to kind of figure that out. And it's magic. I mean, it's not like it's art. It's not, I mean, there's formulas you can follow. Obviously, you can do like, oh, these are my costs. This is how much it costs me to do it. And then I'll mark it up 50% or 100%. So there's science that way. But it's kind of an art in, when you get like something that you don't really know what the value is or what people would pay. So, but pricing is very important to marketing, because, depending on your price would be who your competition is, and maybe the volume of sales. If your price very low, from economic terms, the lower the price, the higher the volume. So Walmart, that's their model. but then you would have to expect to do a lot of volume, right? And do you have the people to do the volume? Higher price, lower volume, small business is kind of in that realm. So you got to figure out the magic, between that. So that's it. That is business planning in a nutshell. So I'll definitely answer some questions right now. If we want to go back through here, if y'all have any more, you can throw them in chat or raise your hand. I'll be glad to answer. I have a question. Does the SBDC offer assistance with how to go about obtaining an LLC? I will say yes. That is a very popular question we get, and an important consideration in starting a business, because the business structure that most people fall into is a sole proprietorship, a partnership, or a corporation, or an LLC. An LLC is actually a state designation. So you register for an LLC with the Secretary of State of South Carolina. And even if you're an LLC, you still have to elect to be a sole proprietor, a partnership, or a corporation. So if it's just you, then likely you could be a sole proprietor LLC. If it's two of you, then you'd be a partnership. Corporation could be one or more people. But yeah, we can advise on which structure. I would usually advise to be an LLC. It offers extra protection, liability protection, and it also creates credibility in some senses, especially for sole proprietors, because a sole proprietor is you. So if I'm Jim Johnson, I'm doing business as, mushroom farmer, the mushroom farm. But I'm Jim Johnson doing business as a mushroom farm. So that means if something happened, then Jim Johnson's on the hook for it. Whereas if you create an LLC for the mushroom farm, you can say the mushroom farm LLC, that creates another entity that's separate from yourself. So now you've actually created another business, a separate entity. And so that mushroom farm LLC is not Jim Johnson. That's the mushroom farm LLC, right? So a lot of people say, hey, I'm dealing with this company and it's just this person's name. You're like, oh, okay, well, I mean, they're doing business as, but it is them, it's not. And so credibility can be offered when you create an entity like an LLC or corporation. Corporations are a little bit more complex. LLCs are simple and inexpensive and do a lot, honestly, to help. So hope that answered the question. We can also help with EINs as well. The EIN is a number that the IRS gives you to file tax returns. But you can also use that number to do many other things, like create merchant services, like take credit cards and business accounts, bank accounts. The nice thing about the EIN is if you're a sole proprietor, I would suggest getting the EIN, even if you are a sole proprietor. If you're an LLC, you get the EIN. You would get the EIN, but you don't use your social security number. You want to be giving all these people your social security number on everything you do. Because you might have vendor contracts that need your social security or your EIN. So you're going to give this vendor your social security number, which the guy's taking your information, might be working for them his last week on the job, and it's got your social security number. So the EIN gives you a little extra protection of your identity too, as a individual. So, and then it's a number that you use to file your tax returns, which you got to file anyway. So might as well do it with an EIN. The EIN is not. So the question is, did I say the EIN is given when you get an LLC? No. you have to apply for EIN separately. As I mentioned, the LLC is a state designation, so you register with the state. EIN is a federal designation. You register with IRS to get that. EINs are free. Don't ever pay to get an EIN. And LLCs cost about $135. And I was just saying, with an LLC, you probably would likely get the EIN. You can still use your social security number with an LLC as a sole proprietor, but I'm just saying it'd probably be better to use an EIN in any case. So who do you speak with? You can let me bring up this slide again. That's our contact information.
There were a couple of other questions just before that I think we might have overlooked.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
One was, if your business will predominantly be a business that provides humanitarian services, is it good practice to apply for a 501c3?
A 501c3?
Yeah, if they're providing humanitarian services, would they want to be nonprofit? Is that the best way to go?
You said managerial services?
Humanitarian.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, thank you. Well, yeah, not nonprofit. We don't do a lot of work with nonprofits, although I've got a pretty good background in nonprofits. Our mission has us working with for-profit businesses. There's a lot of reasons that you could go nonprofit, and a humanitarian mission is definitely a good one. But you can be a for-profit and have a humanitarian mission. There's something called a B corporation or a benefit corp, where, I mean, your mission is to help somehow society, but you're making a profit doing it. So the B corp is kind of like a compromise between nonprofit and, C corp or business, right? But really it acts like a business. But yeah, the thing about a nonprofit business structure is, the business is, you have to have a board of directors, and the power lies within the board of directors. And if you are on that board of directors, you are not the owner of that business. You are a director. You could be the president or the chairman of the board or the president of the nonprofit, but you don't own anything, any of those assets. The nonprofit owns those assets. If they acquired them and it was put in their name, then they own those assets. You as an individual do not own those assets. And sometimes there's problems with raising money with nonprofits, because it's like, who's going to guarantee it? Are you as a board member going to guarantee it, but the nonprofit owns it? If you get a loan for $100,000, you're on the hook if you're a guarantor. And if you use that $100,000 to buy a vehicle, it's in the name of the nonprofit owns it. You do not own it. And if something happens, you still owe for it. So there's a lot of great things you can do with nonprofit. Just keep in mind about ownership, about there are no profits. Everything is, reinvested into the organization. You can pay yourself from a nonprofit. You can be an employee of the nonprofit. You can pay yourself. The board would have to vote on that. The majority of the board would have to decide about your payment. But I mean, there's a lot of, good reasons to do nonprofits, and they're great. Plenty of them out there. It just depends on what your goals are and how you go about, running the business. I mean, there's a lot of considerations, honestly, but we can always have one-on-one conversations about that as well.
Okay, so another question was, there was somebody that reached out to SBDC, hadn't heard back yet, but their question is about what permits are needed to create, excuse me, their online store.
Okay.
Are there any permits that are needed to create an online store?
Maybe. If you have a retail product if you have a product, then you probably should get a retail license for the state of South Carolina, which is $50. You register with Department of Revenue. And what happens is you get a retail license and you have to collect sales tax on any sales that you make within South Carolina. If you sell something outside of South Carolina, you don't have to collect sales tax on it. But e-commerce, you're supposed to, collect sales tax on that, and keep up with all that. So that's a rate. Outside of that, you'd have to check. It's different county to county, whether you need a business license to do that. I'm giving you what the policy would be, so like if I was to call Orangeburg County and I was going to say, hey, I got an e-commerce business, do I need a business license? They would be like, yes. So that's what you're supposed to do. Is that what people do? Not all the time, especially with e-commerce. But it's getting, some of these platforms are cracking down on it. Like if you are on eBay or Etsy or any of these other things, they're gonna make sure that you're a licensed seller. But yeah, you should get a retail license and check with your county to see if they need one.
Okay, I was trying to reply to this last question, but since you're finished discussing that, I'll go ahead and let you answer it too.
Okay.
So the last question was, will I need? Oh, sorry, there was another one that popped up. Let me go before that. Okay, how do you verify EIN? They've had their LLC for a while, and they're just now really getting started, so they can't remember if they've applied, if they did apply for EIN or not. So how do they verify that?
I don't think there's an EIN lookup. If they've never I'm thinking if you've never filed on it, you might can just get another one.
That's what I was thinking too.
I'll just go out and get another one. It's not a big deal if you didn't file. The only thing is you can only have one EIN per sole proprietorship. You can have as many EINs for LLCs and things like that, but if you didn't already register for a sole proprietorship, if it's an LLC, you'll probably be fine. I just go get another one if you can't find it. And that's the other thing is once you get your EIN, print that piece of paper out and don't lose it because it's aggravating to get another one. I mean, you got
I'd say save it in an online source, email it to yourself, save it in your Dropbox on your Google Drive, and print it out.
Yes,
find
all of the
all
above.
the way.
Because you can't. It's just very difficult to deal with the IRS to get another copy of that little sheet. I don't know why they make it so hard. It seems like if you can give them your information that you can get a copy of your EIN, but it's like virtually impossible. Not impossible, but you're just gonna have to sit on hold for a little while.
Yeah, that's the other thing. You could call the IRS to give them your information and they can look it up and see if you've got an EIN. But there is that whole calling the IRS and being on hold for a lifetime if we're speaking to somebody. So
yeah, just be prepared to wait. Yep, they'll mail it or fax it to you. Exactly. But you'll just have to wait for them. But yeah, you can get it. But if you hadn't used that EIN, you can get another. I've done it before. I've gotten another EIN. There's another thing that says, do you need to register in the county? Okay, you did that one. Okay. So do you need to register in the county you live in for a home office business? Okay, that's a little different. Home office business. Yeah, that one's kind of a gray area. You should. If your county requires a business license, you should register and get a business license, even if you're a home office. That if I called the county, that's what they would tell me. Is that you need a business license. So I'll just pass that along.
All right, here's another question. Will I need a retail license even if it's not my product that I'm selling? I'm working towards opening a braid shop, but also want to tap into retail as well.
A braid shop. If you're selling, if it's not your product, yeah, I think you still, I mean, if you're selling any product or reselling a product, right, which you're buying the product from somebody and then you're reselling it, or even if you're manufacturing it and selling it to the customer, you should have a retail license for a product. You don't need the only time you don't
Especially if
need,
you're selling it and making profit on it. Like
Yeah.
if you're selling it and just giving all the money to the other business, then you're really just a place for them to place their products to be sold. But if you're selling it and you and your business are making a profit on it, then you'll still want to
yeah,
make sure you
even
have
if,
retail license.
yeah,
for
even
it.
if you were like doing a model where you were drop shipping, like you're just doing the marketing basically, and somebody else is fulfilling the order. I mean, you still have to, the product is still channeling through you in a way, and you should collect sales tax on it. So in that case, you would need a retail license. The only time you don't need a retail license is if you have a service. You know, if you're selling any products, you should have a retail license and and collect sales tax on it. There are exemptions though. I will say there are exemptions, like you have to go to the Department of Revenue's website to find out what's exempted. But I'll give you an example. Food is an exempt item, but you still need a retail license if you're selling food. It's just exempt from taxes. You don't have to collect taxes on non-prepared food. If it's prepared food, you got to collect taxes. Like a restaurant, you got to collect taxes. But like a grocery store, you know, you don't pay taxes on food at grocery stores. So you don't have to pay taxes on that. On raw food, like, you know, fruits and vegetables. If you're a farmers, I mean, don't collect taxes on any of that. But you're supposed to have a retail license. But it's just when you file your tax return, you just say, you know, you're selling an exempt item. So you're not collecting any taxes on it. And I do that. Remember, I mentioned I had a nonprofit that I ran that sold food to SNAP recipients. I filed an annual tax return. So I didn't do it every month. I just did it once a year because all of it was exempt. So I could say, all right, this is how much I sold. It's all exempt. Zero. I owe you no money. I didn't collect any sales tax. Didn't have to. So yeah, there are exempt categories, but you just got to figure out what that is. But you still might need the retail license. Hope that answers that question. That's one we get up pretty often though. But yeah,
I think that's all the questions that I see. We're kind of gone a little bit over our time here.
okay, yeah, we have gone a couple hours this time. Might not be so long next time, but we had to get it started. So hope everybody enjoyed it, and we'll be back here next week, next Tuesday, same time. And Karina will be presenting on marketing, giving you a deeper dive into how to go out and get those customers. There is availability for the next session. You should be, it'll be the same link. The link you use this time will work next time. And I'll send out recording, slides, and some information tomorrow on the session. So thank y'all, everybody, for attending. I hope everybody has a great night and have a great week.
Bye, everyone. See you next week.